5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
This is the Culture Clash.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Culture Clash here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Luckily, we are currently live. We'll see how that goes with the way things have been going with Microsoft today and all of that wonderful stuff. It's affecting everybody in a lot of ways, and I know it greatly affected my co-host tonight. Of course, he is my co-founder here at the Fandom Podcast Network, the one and only missing Starbucks, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
Hey, you guys! What's going on?
Are you with us? Are you with us today, Kevin? I know because of the world coming to an end digitally, you missed out on your Starbucks today.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee, but I need my Starbucks refreshers in the morning. It's because especially since I work so early in the morning, and when I have that break at lunch, which is in the morning, I need that little pick me up. And my app wouldn't work, and I couldn't order it. And then, and then they say, well, you have to go into your store. I'm like, well, if I go into the store, I don't get the credits on the app. And anyway, first world problems, right?
I mean, as long as your refresher habit isn't as bad as Homelander's drinking habit,
I don't know what that is, so no spoilers, please.
That's been established in other seasons. We'll talk about the boys a little bit later, though. But this is Culture Clash, and we are going to be talking about the season finale. We don't know yet.
I don't know.
Of Star Wars: The Acolyte, Episode 8, The Acolyte. We're gonna have, I think, interesting conversations today. We'll see how people react to it. But of course, this
real quick, Kyle. Did you any chance see the day after eulogy that Chris Gore on his website or his podcast was having about the?
Yeah. I actually forgot about it, but I knew it was
the funeral of Star Wars, as he called it. And
enlighten me. Did you watch any of it?
I watched maybe about 30 minutes of it because apparently it was going on for quite a while, and he had a plethora of people on there, of all he had women and men and on there coming in talking, all Star Wars fans, talking about majority of the people are not happy with this series and not happy with how Star Wars has been going since Disney has been taken over. I mean, it's had, I guess, to sum it up, it's more misses than hits, so, but yeah, they were getting a lot of views there, but then I was kind of starting to get depressed and I stopped watching.
Yeah, I can understand that, but you know what, Kevin, we are here talking about the Acolyte on the Fandom Podcast Network, your home for everything in fandom. It's always a fun time around here. This is, of course, the flagship show, Culture Clash. We will be wrapping up our coverage of the Acolyte this week. Some of us might say, oh, thank God it's over. Some of us might be disappointed. We don't know yet. We will find out before the end of this episode, though. But spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about a lot of things happening in fandom, including diving deep into the final episode of the Acolyte. So if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it, come back, join us here on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio version of this show, hit pause, watch it, and then come back because we do like your participation in the episodes here. But we got some other things going on because we're not just about Culture Clash here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And there's some very, very important things happening around the Fandom Podcast Network, including Time Warp and Deadpool month, Kevin. What's happening over at the Time Warp? Where did you drive the FPNet time machine this time?
Well, we've been covering the year of 1984 all of this year because it's 40 years ago, and we just dropped the newest one. Of course, this is July as we are discussing, talking right now of 2024, and we were discussing July of 1984. And of course, we had iconic films like The Last Starfighter, Revenge of the Nerds, Purple Rain, Never-Ending Story, and so that is a monthly series going by month, of course. And next month, of course, we'll be talking about August of 1984 for Time Warp, and I'll get into something that we just recorded last night in a moment. We got some Deadpool though, Kyle. I'm a little excited. Are we gonna do a little excitement talk on Deadpool now, or what are we waiting on?
We're gonna get to that in just a minute, but it is Deadpool. It is Deadpool month here at the Fandom Podcast Network because you know what? less than a week away from Deadpool and Wolverine coming out. The hype is getting it. I'm going to say right now, if you are trying to stay spoiler free, do not watch the recent trailer that came out today. There's some major spoilers in it, so just avoid it at all costs. But that means we're doing all kinds of fun Deadpool stuff here at the Fandom Podcast Network, and it started with our re-release of our classic Couch Potato Theater Valentine's Day special for Deadpool, which we did about a little over a year ago now, and that was a fun little Deadpool to do. Deadpool, I think, Kevin, is a very underrated Valentine's Day film.
Yes, definitely. It's a love story.
Yeah, it is very much a love story. But we aren't done with the Deadpool yet. We still got chimichangas here in plethora because out today, Couch Potato Theater, Deadpool 2. We recently recorded this, giving our thoughts on not only Deadpool 2, but Once Upon a Deadpool as well, Kevin.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We had Leslye on as a guest, and we also had David Lozano on from the Star Wars Stuff podcast. Huge Deadpool fan that he is. And it was a lot of fun talking about kind of underrated how important that movie is and how it sets up this Deadpool and Wolverine film. And also a lot of fun discussing Once Upon a Deadpool, which was Deadpool 2 released later in the year for the holidays with a PG-13 rating with Fred Savage. And it was a lot of fun.
Kevin, will you wear a Deadpool mask and tell me a storybook story?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're not going to go there anymore. And then coming up a week from this Sunday, will be our live reaction show to Deadpool Wolverine, which we're going to have a ton to talk about there.
Spoiler reaction show.
Very, very heavy spoiler reaction and I bet you we don't even catch everything because I think that movie's going to be so packed with stuff that you're going to have to watch it like 6 times before.
That is going to be on July 28th. We're looking at either 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern time. We will confirm that shortly and let you guys know. So, Kyle, as you mentioned, there is some spoiler. I mean, they keep releasing all these little, new trailers and stuff like this. I've had to stop watching them. And you had warned me that there was one that came out today, and I'm like, yeah, I know. I saw Matthew Clifton's post. I'm like, not doing it, but still, I am so excited about this film. I'm going to be getting off work a little early on that Thursday to go see it twice on that preview night on Thursday. Man, dude, the excitement for this film, I was discussing it with one of my friends at work who's also a big fan of the MCU, and a couple of other people we were discussing about it. The excitement for this film for me, I would say, rivals the Avengers, Infinity War and, Endgame type of I can't wait to get into this, or, the last Spider-Man film with all the other Spider-Mans in it. What do you think? Because I'm feeling that type of excitement right now.
I'm excited, but I think where I'm at with this is I cannot wait to see this film. Don't get me wrong. I am all in. I think this film is so important too for what it could do for the MCU and actually theaters in general this year. That I'm trying to, in one hand, I'm so excited. I'm trying to temper expectations a little bit because we've heard so many rumors, we've heard so many things. I want to go in and just enjoy the ride with Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman just turned up to 1,000, and I cannot wait for it. But as far as its effect on the MCU, I'm just I want to wait and see. But I have hopes. But I'm going to be a little bit honest, and it's not that it's this movie. It's been a rough go for the MCU the last few years. So I'm really hoping this is the movie that gets us back on track, because it's actually real quick, Kevin. I'm just going to say it's a huge weekend for Marvel Studios because you have Deadpool, Wolverine coming out. You're going to have Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman at Comic-Con. They are going to have a panel there. That's confirmed. You're going to have a lot of announcements about the MCU this weekend, too. So not only will we be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, we are probably going to be talking about some of the big announcements that are coming out of Hall H, because Marvel is back at Hall H this year, first time in a while, and it's going to be a very big MCU weekend.
The only thing I'm excited of new news, I don't know what else could be new news, because they've already said what's going to be coming out. We just don't know when it's coming out. So are you just retelling us what's coming out and you're going to confirm dates or months or years? I mean, other than seeing, Hugh and Ryan Reynolds in a panel in Hall H together, what new news could you say unless you got, Deadpool confirmed for one of these other films with possibly Wolverine again. I mean, did he
Well,
sign on for more than one? I don't know. You know,
there are a lot of rumors that the cast of the Fantastic Four are going to be there. We might see some the first Fantastic Four footage, some announcements on these Avengers films. We've got some possible Marvel news later on in the show that could have a very big effect on that. Maybe some casting news. Maybe we find out Doctor Doom or Kang. But I think there's going to be a very big announcement. Could even be X-Men.
Don't set yourself up for disappointment, Kyle. I'm just saying. When it comes to those panels, you know, they say so much, and then what happens? Yeah. So yeah. I'm not as excited about the panels as you are. I'm just not.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
But I'm excited for Deadpool Wolverine so much, and I'm hoping that I can get my hands on a popcorn bucket. We'll see.
We did a little bit of time traveling on Couch Potato Theater too, because we went back to 1986, got our BMXs out, and got rad, Kevin.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And of course, did that with the queen of movie for herself, Miss Leslye Headland. And then we also have something coming up. We will be recording soon, getting back to the year of time travel here at the Fandom Podcast Network. One of my favorite Tom Cruise movies, and I think one of my favorite time loop movies, Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat, or whatever name of that movie, because that movie has about 5 names at this point, Kevin.
Repeat, Die, Live. Tomorrow of Edge. Yeah, I'm excited for this one, man. Yeah, and we're going to be releasing that very soon. And yeah, I don't want to spoil too much about it right now, but I'm working on some notes on that for right now. And we're going to have some fun discussions on that.
Kevin, I'm going to let you talk about this because I'm going to go eat a bowl of my new Kelsey Kick cereal.
Very nice. Yeah, so last night, Kyle, we had a lot of fun live on the Fandom Podcast Network. We did Time Warp NFL Raiders players who acted in movies and television. And this was a lot of fun. You don't have to be a Raiders fan to enjoy this show, but it's great. We had Murph from Raiders Fan Radio on there. We also had Raiders fan and historian and author Rich Smelter on, which is a great discussion. You were on the show as well. We were bringing out some old movies here. I got these VHS copies of Howie Long and Firestorm and Al Zato and the Destroyer. It was a lot of fun. A fun discussion was had, and we had some people crossover from the Raiders Fan Radio fandom, and we're joining in discussion in the chat. That was a lot of fun.
It was. Even if it was all Raiders, it was still a lot of fun. We got some good guys there, and it was actually some really good talk about some pretty famous people. And
it's on the network on YouTube right now. Make sure you guys check it out. The audio podcast will be dropping a little bit later.
Absolutely. But guys, we also are going to be in this Culture Clash talking about some breaking news a little bit later. And of course, our own review section. Buy it, stream it, or unsee it. You like it so much you want to buy it? Or is it okay and you're just going to stream it? Or gosh, can I just get that image out of my eyesight? Can we unsee it? But before we get to any of that, Kevin, it's time for the main topic of our show, Star Wars The Acolyte. We are into the final episode of The Acolyte. We are going to be diving into all the happenings, some thoughts on the season, and some thoughts about where we go from here, because I don't know if I have the words for it right now, but the other people who might have some words for it are our good friends over at What a Piece of Junk Art, exclusive Star Wars podcast to the Fandom Podcast Network. The guys over there driving Drunken Gungan, Scott, Nathan, and Derek always do a phenomenal job, and I know they're going to have their own very interesting takes on the season finale of The Acolyte and what direction things might go with The Acolyte from here as well. But they do a good job. Don't let them fool you, and they always have some premium sodas on their podcast. But for us, it is time. Episode 8, The Acolyte. It's time to get into reactions. So without further ado, let's talk some Star Wars, The Acolyte. One last time, spoiler alert. Last chance, we're going to get into the minutia of everything that was episode 8 of Star Wars: The Acolyte. So, Kevin, without further ado, would you kind of give us the plot synopsis for the season finale, series finale, I don't know, of Star Wars: The Acolyte, episode 8, The Acolyte?
All right. After seeing a vision of May apparently killing Saul without a weapon, Osha and Kamir head out to find them while being watched by Darth Plagueis in a cave. On the ship, May breaks free and crashes on Brendok in a capsule while escaping Saul. Meanwhile, Venestra gathers a group of Jedi to bring in Saul. On Brendok, Saul, Kamir, and Osha begin searching for May inside the fortress. Both parties confront and fight each other. May disarms Saul, but chooses to let him live so he can confess his crimes before the council. Saul reveals that she and Osha are the same person and admits to killing their mother. An angry Osha uses the Force for the first time and chokes Saul to death, corrupting the Kyber crystal in the lightsaber, which turns red. She and May escape together before Venestra arrives and discovers Saul's corpse. As the sisters reconcile, they are found by Kamir, and Osha agrees to train with him. In order to protect the pair from the Jedi, Kamir wipes May's memory before she is apprehended by the Jedi. Back on Coruscant, the Senate grows weary of the Jedi's action and launches an investigation into the Order. Venestra decides to cover up the recent events on Brendok and the murders of Torben, Indara, and Kelnaka by putting the blame entirely on Saul, and reveals that Kamir was once her apprentice. She later visits Jedi Master Yoda to discuss the situation.
Oh, Kevin, the series has reached its finale. Initial reactions?
You go first.
This episode represented everything that was good, bad, and frustrating with the series as a whole. There is some incredible fight scenes in this. The writing in this episode starts off pretty solid and goes pretty strong until about the last, I'd say, 15 minutes of the episode, when it just goes entirely off the rails in so many different and bizarre and what choices are we making directions. And then we have the reveal of Darth Plagueis, one of the most important Sith lords in Star Wars canon right now, and all we get is him like acting like Gollum, kind of hiding behind a rock, watching from the distance. That's how we reveal this grand Sith.
I have a comment about that particularly, but yes.
Yeah. This episode was, to be honest with you, there was nothing in this episode that honestly even surprised me with what they did. There was a lot of things I had predicted going back to as early as episode 3. Again, the good side, great fight scenes. They are dealing with some very interesting concepts and ideas, but they are executing them terribly. And that's, again, my personal
Hold on,
feeling.
you dropped out for a sec. Executing what?
They're executing these ideas terribly on screen.
Okay, gotcha.
And that is something that the show has been my gripe with the show for a while, is the execution of how they're doing things. But yeah, Kevin, I think too, and I know we'll dive into this a little bit later, but to have the final scene be what it is feels like a forced trick to try to force a season 2 to be made. Not, oh, we were good enough to have a season 2. We are trying to force you to make a season 2.
See your point there. After I saw it, I went on the old Facebooks and I said, I gave it a chance. And I went in with an open mind. The Acolyte didn't stick the landing. Mostly unlikable characters, not for me, and I won't be rewatching it. It's not what I wanted out of Star Wars. If you liked it, I respect your opinion. Respect mine, please. No spoilers, please. That was my first reaction, Kyle. And I still stand by that. But I was reminded that we are in an era where we're getting new Star Wars on a frequent basis. Of course, most of it is on television. 2019 was the last film that we saw. But and I learned from, when The Last Jedi came out, I'm like, you know what? You don't have to like all Star Wars. Just like what you like and enjoy, and stay the Star Wars fan that you are and enjoy what you enjoy, and go back and revisit what you do like. and it's interesting too, because when I can make a comparison to some Marvel shows that have come out that I won't be rewatching either, that I'm kind of blocking from my mind. More recently, Secret Invasion, and maybe that's not what the big picture is about, but because this is what's now, and this is what we're discussing, and this is what we do, we are entitled to these opinions. And with a series that didn't really have anyone that was likable, anyone that you wanted to root for, found kind of depressing overall to watch. There was obviously some good ideas that were, that they were trying to execute, and some good visuals and definitely good fights, but you can't hang a series on that and then go back and go, oh, but I want to rewatch it for that. Right now I'd kind of would rather go back and rewatch Andor. That was a show that really kind of grabbed me in for a lot of reasons there. And it's funny too, Kyle, as I've been listening to the Darth Plagueis novel, and we were wondering if we were going to get the reveal, and we were wondering, when it first came out, is that Darth Plagueis? And apparently that has been confirmed by the creator. We'll get into that later. But in the novel, Kyle, this guy was a little more highbrow. He wore nice robes and doubled as another character's. He was known as Dumas. I think it was Dumas. This banking character that had a lot of power and privilege. And he lived in Coruscant, and he lived at 500 Republica, if I remember that right. And that's like the fancy rich area that a lot of the politicians at the time lived at in this era of Star Wars, when Darth Plagueis was doing his stuff, and then of course recruiting a young Sidious, aka Palpatine. And it's just that's not how I wanted to see Plagueis. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But we're gonna get into that more here in a little bit. But Kevin, you mentioned ideas and things that this show did. That tells me it's time to get into a little Star Wars trivia, because there were some ideas that tie into some things that have happened already in canon. And I know you've probably found some Sith holocrons that will explain some of the things we're going to talk about in Star Wars trivia. Yeah, so the main, we only got one main topic for trivia here, but we're going to kind of have a little discussion about this. This is kind of a big deal. The first time in a series or film that the process of bleeding a kyber crystal is shown. The only other time the bleeding process has been seen on screen was that when the fallen Jedi Dagan Gera, who was from the High Republic era, raged in hatred, corrupted his kyber crystal while he was dueling former Padawan Cal Kestis in Star Wars Jedi Survivor 2023. That was when it came out. The reasons lightsabers carried by the Sith and dark side are red is because the kyber crystal has been corrupted from the dark side of the Force. A dark side adept used the Force to bend the crystal to their will. This process changes the color of the crystals to red. The canon comic book Darth Vader reveals that when a Sith Lord makes their first lightsaber, they must kill a Jedi in combat and take the crystal from their lightsaber and bleed to it. To use it as their own, which is why the stranger tasked May to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. The canon novel, Ahsoka 2016, also revealed that the light side of the Force can heal a red kyber crystal and remove the corruption, turning the crystal's color white, which is why Ahsoka Tano's lightsaber in Star Wars Rebels 2014, Mandalorian 2019, Ahsoka 2023, have white blades. She took the kyber crystals from an Inquisitor's lightsaber after defeating him in a duel and healed them with the light side and used them in her newly constructed lightsabers. Now, Kyle, I noticed that you had a picture up there. There was an article on Screen Rant by Nathaniel Rourke, published earlier this week, saying how the blue lightsaber was turned red to the Acolyte. Osha bled the kyber crystal in Soul's lightsaber. Her negative emotions changed the crystal in the Force. And they make reference to that comic book panel that you just put up there, Kyle. I'm going to read from that panel directly. Even every Sith lightsaber is powered by a corrupted Jedi crystal. This is a rite of passage for a Sith apprentice. And there is a scene in this canon comic book between Vader and Sidious. And Sidious says,
The fools hid the knowledge they found uncomfortable. They could not face the darker. Maybe I should say this in this. Excuse me. The fools hid the knowledge they found uncomfortable. They could not face the darker truths, and they paid the price. The red lightsaber is no different than any other, except it has been made to bleed. How's that, Kyle? Were you convinced that I was?
Ian, I didn't know you were on this podcast. Wow, that is really cool. We get guest stars I had no idea about.
Kyber crystals bleeding is how all Sith create red lightsabers and considered a rite of passage. Immediately after the events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine explains the process of the bleeding of a Kyber crystal, as mentioned in this comic panel and in these stills that you could see with the lightsaber that Osha is holding there. So this is kind of news to me, Kyle, just because I haven't really paid much attention to the comics. And I didn't know that you had to bleed. But, I guess if it bleeds, you can kill it.
Well, I seem to remember there was talk about Kylo.
Oh, come on, Kyle. That was a Predator joke. You just let it slide. Come on.
Well, me killing things when it comes to this particular show might be a bad path to go down right now. But
whatever.
Manly Dutch handshake later. They did talk a little bit about the bleeding Kyber crystal with Kylo Ren because of the way his crystal was cracked and everything like that. But here's the thing with this, and this is something to me. This is a big miss when you're doing the writing of this, because to me, if you're establishing this is what happens to a Kyber crystal and it changes color, Anakin should have been red long before the end of the episode 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, but he hadn't made the turn to the dark side yet. But I mean, you think that when he and the clones were executing Order 66 and going up before he murders the children, you'd think, yeah, there might have been some red in there as well. So yeah, obviously there was some, and maybe it should have turned red when he was fighting Obi-Wan there on the lava planet, and yeah, but what are you gonna do?
Okay, so just if we would have had this in canon then, actually, how cool would have been that scene if he hit his lightsaber and it starts coming out blue and then turning red as he's about ready to fight Obi-Wan?
Yeah, definitely. That would have been a really cool effect to have seen then. But I guess they decided to kind of, well, I mean, I got to give them credit for at least, pulling from something that's canon in a comic book and then bringing it to life on the show. I will give them credit for that. And I don't have a problem with this, Kyle. It's not like they're changing history, really. They're just kind of adding to it. And obviously this does take place before most of the Star Wars that we know, especially the live action versions and stuff. And it was kind of interesting to see on screen.
Yeah, well, when the Revenge of the Jedi special edition comes out, and Lucasfilm puts the lightsaber change in there, I expect my royalty checks, please.
Especially when he says like, well, I think the Jedi are evil.
Yeah.
Red, that's when it should have turned red. That would have been great.
Yeah. Exactly. But you know what, guys, it is time to get into our main topics for this episode of The Acolyte. Okay, Kevin, topic 1, and this is a conversation we had about this topic before, off mic when we were trying to set up the show, but you brought this up at the end of last week, how important it was going to be for the Acolyte to stick the landing. I think if you've listened already, you probably know our feelings on this, but Kevin, did the Acolyte stick the landing?
No. Do you remember the 1981 animated R-rated film Heavy Metal?
Yes.
Remember there was that one tyrannical king that says, they die, he dies, she dies, everybody dies.
Oh, yes, I do remember. That was a John Candy short, if I remember correct. Dar or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was just like, okay, you didn't really redeem anyone. And I get it. This is a dark side tale, learning about the dark side of things here in Star Wars, and I get it. But it would have been nice to walk away from this show and going, you know what? I'm really excited about this person and what they did. And and they, even though they died, but they went out with a heroic sacrifice or something like that. No, not really. And the character of Soul, I love the actor, dude, but I'm not in a hurry to jump out and make a costume for the guy. I'm not interested in a backstory anymore. And I look at the other Jedi that were killed. I guess Jecki would have been interesting, but yeah, this did not stick the landing, and the whole thing. We'll talk about the other Sith Lord in this, but yeah, it just left me unsatisfied and not wanting to rewatch the episode for our discussion today. I just watched it once. It was done.
Let me ask you this, Kevin, because I have up on the screen the final shot of this season series of the Acolyte. We still don't know. We'll get into that in a little bit. Was this manipulative? This final shot? Because I feel like it was.
I felt it was more like what we're referring to for the listening audience is the picture of behind Yoda's head when Venestra comes in. This to me felt like, okay, we got to have some fan service to connect to the Star Wars that we know and the characters that we know, because when you think about all of the other characters in this series, Kyle, what do we have? Was it Ki-Adi-Mundi? Is that who we had?
Yeah,
a reference to. Other than that, now we've got Yoda. Yeah. This was another thing too. If you're hoping for a season 2 and you're just going to show the back of Yoda's head and then some Sith Lord creeping out in a cave, that doesn't make me excited or even want to see what comes next. If there is a season 2, we'll get into that later. I have thoughts.
So I said this before. This just felt like, okay, we're going to tack this in because we need something to get people talking, so we can try to get a season 2. It felt manipulative to me. It just did. It's like, oh, okay, we don't.
What do you mean by manipulative? Explain that, because I know what the word means, but I need you to explain how you're applying to how Star Wars and the Acolyte is manipulating us as fans.
Okay, in this particular shot, to have this be the final shot of this season, which basically makes you feel like you're ending on a cliffhanger. Oh, well, we're going to put Yoda in this shot so everybody's talking, so it's going to put more pressure on Disney to give us a second season because we put Yoda in this shot because Yoda is so beloved, and obviously with the Grogu thing and things like that. I think they're in the back of their minds, the creators are thinking, hey, you know what, whatever we can do. And I just feel like it's a little bit of an emotional manipulation to put in such a beloved character as Yoda like that for the final shot of this, which has also been a very depressing series.
When you use the word manipulate though, Kyle, I can kind of take it as a fan of Venestra going to try to manipulate Yoda of what really happened or didn't happen. That's what I was kind of looking at going here, like, because what exactly is she going to tell Yoda, and then what are we going to learn from Yoda in the prequel series of what they've mentioned, of Sith from the past and the hubris of Jedi and how things have kind of slightly been changing. So I don't know. It's I don't know. I'll mention that more when we talk about season 2 if it's going to happen.
Now, Kevin, one of the other big things in this episode was obviously Osha going to the dark side, which I'm going to pat myself on the back just a little bit here. I called this about episode 3. It's like, oh, I can see where we're going. Please don't do this, but
you weren't the only one to say that, though, Kyle. I mean, it was one of those things where, like, let's see these characters flip,
Well, but to have it, then you have it, and then to have the two of them holding hands, it seemed weird. It seemed kind of out of place. Like,
yeah, I thought he was like trying to take the lightsaber from her. Like, yeah, let me get that back from you right now. You might need some more training with that.
but it was just weird. I feel like the whole execution of it was, again, very predictable. everything that happened with the May memory wipe, everything that goes there, just it was rough. Justin Jones, welcome to the show. Remember when the space witch lesbian fed little? Oh yeah. I can understand.
Do you want to read it for the audio audience, Kyle?
Yeah. Sorry, just remember when the space witch lesbians fed little girls drugs. Not a show for my 3 daughters. I parental blocked this show on Disney Plus, and I'm going to be honest with you. I can understand why he might do that with this show.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
Because we did have full on Sith backside as well, in this too. But Kevin, there's another thing that's been bothering me with this episode as far as sticking the landing, and it's this scene right here. I think a very powerful scene, and it's something that hasn't been confirmed, but there's a lot of people out there who are saying this is going down as the first Force choke death in Star Wars history now. And I'm like, really? That's...
I haven't been hearing that. I don't.
Yeah,
know
it's been making the rounds on some of the social medias I've been seeing. What did you feel like? What did you feel about this?
But hold on. How can that fourth? Did they not see the original trilogy with Vader choking out?
Well, no. What they're saying in the what I mean by that is by timeline wise. This is the first time the Force in timeline the Force choke has.
Are you talking about in new Disney canon?
In new Disney canon, yes.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes back to the non-canon books too, but it's just one of those things like, okay, whatever.
But I am curious about what you thought of this moment, because this was meant to be one of the more emotional, powerful moments of the episode.
No, I was kind of like, go Saul, die. I was not caring for him. He did horrible things, and we knew he was going to die. We were just kind of curious on how it was going to happen.
Justin Jones chimes in again. When I saw this, I was confused because I was still trying to figure out which one was Osha and which one was May. I'm still confused, actually.
I could see why. Yeah.
I think we're all still a little confused on that.
I didn't expect him to go out with a Force choke, but I almost kind of feel like he was the character. He was just kind of like, I'm kind of giving up here because I killed the parents, and I'm feeling grief here and whatever, but I kind of wished he went out in a better fashion to make me somewhat like him. But again, this just falls under a long line of these characters that are unlikable. The only person I can kind of come out of this that was kind of likable was Khmer, the Sith here. So
yeah, I think with this moment too. Again, the idea was there because all through the series is like you have to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. And now, when you think about it, it's like, oh, this should have been obvious, but nobody was thinking of this. I mean, I don't know anybody who was thinking of this being a way to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. So I actually thought that was a pretty cool aspect to do that, because it's like, oh, it should have been obvious, and that was one of the few things in the show that wasn't obvious. But
well, yeah, I mean, they set it up from the beginning, like if you're going to go lightsaber to lightsaber against a Jedi, you're probably going to lose because they are formidable with that weapon, and you have to be clever on other ways. And when you go back and read or listen to the audiobook that I have of Darth Plagueis, they use poison, they use other things to try to kill. They use I think what was it, collapsing items and things to distract people of that are powerful in the Force, other than a weapon to kill them. And it also helps hide a crime as well. Because if you kill everyone with a lightsaber, that leaves evidence as well. But it also, as an assassin and as a killer, especially if you're going up to the Jedi who train a certain way and train with certain rules and guidelines, you can get one over them by using other little tricks. And like we saw what happened to Indara and the way that she was killed. Her compassion to save someone else led to her death with being stabbed, in the heart by a flying dagger.
But you know what, Kevin? I have one other revelation after the episode, after this final episode. This is the true villain of the Acolyte, Venestra. She's in charge.
Another unlikable character.
she's in charge. She is lying through her teeth to everybody. She's keeping secrets about her past Padawan. The shock she has, oh, he's alive. And then we don't even get a confrontation between really the two of them, just like a stare down moment. And that's about it. And then she is just dirty through and through. And I just, there's no redeeming this character for me.
This picture does remind me of something. I do want to give a shout out to the costume designers of this show. They did a fantastic job. And the set decorators and stuff like that, the fight choreographers and stuff like that. But the writers, I'm gonna put you in restriction. I'm gonna send you to the corner. I'm gonna have you think about what you've done. So yeah.
Kevin,
go ahead.
Justin Jones pops in again. This is interesting. Is Yoda complicit or ignorant? Either way, he's a big bag now based on his cameo.
That's a good question. Ignorant is what I'm going to kind of go with. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good call, Justin. I like that.
The question is what did Vanestra tell him? Did she tell him the truth or did she tell him the lie? That's one of the things we really don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just this show did not stick its landing. There was potential to this show, and they just couldn't find it. And I went into the show with some high hopes of seeing something really unique to Star Wars.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
I just feel like I got some stuff churned out that was incomplete. It's like somebody who wrote their book report like the night before it was due. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So
there was some concept and ideas, but it just wasn't told well.
No,
it like I said, that's all comes back to not sticking the landing on this stuff. You really have to, I don't know. Anyway,
to take the characters they have in the show, they could have written Saul in a way where, yes, he still did what he did, but you just don't feel like he's as slimy as he is. Because I don't necessarily think Saul was a bad guy. He was just stubborn and misguided. But when you have what happened here, where the Sith is Quamir, it might be the best of the bunch, literally. Yeah, that's just it's a problem and it's poor execution.
That's my favorite. If I had to choose one shining moment of this entire series, is when Quamir is talking dark side stuff, especially with
Osha.
No, Saul, and he's explaining why he is and why he wants to exist and why he doesn't like the Jedi, and you understand that he can't exist because the Jedi won't allow him. Thus, why he will kill Jedi, because he is trying to live the life that he wants to live and use the Force in the way that he wants. And then the next episode, or maybe the one after that, whatever it was, when he's talking with Osha more about that. Those are my best and only really likable scenes, and you could talk about all the lightsaber stuff if you want, but I'm at this point right now where I really don't care about how much action and how cool it looks. Story's number one for me.
Yeah. Well, speaking of story and speaking of Sith, let's move on to topic number 2, Kevin, because this is one that Darth Plagueis. Kevin, you have been begging for Plagueis since like the first episode of this series.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have echoed some of those sentiments. Well, we got Plagueis. Are you sure what's it called? I want to go into an article real quick before we get into our discussion here, Kevin. They interviewed Leslye Headland about Plagueis, and according to her, Plagueis was always in the finale in every version. This is from an IndieWire interview in an upcoming episode of the Filmmaker Toolkit podcast. Darth Plagueis the Wise is the Sith Lord referenced most notably in Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith as part of Palpatine's pitch to Anakin to join the dark side. He was, in fact, Palpatine's old master. Headland has said she's been waiting many years for Darth Plagueis to show up in Star Wars proper, and she did, in fact, get to be the change she wanted to see in the world. But finessing Plagueis' appearance into the Acolyte turned out to be as tricky to nail down as tracking a Sith. There was a version where he was the button of the finale instead of Yoda, Headland said, but having the sinister figure be the last thing that we see never felt quite right. You want to feel Osha's triumph. You want to feel her joining forces with the stranger. Plagueis stepped on that moment. Even though Osha and the stranger are standing there, sort of looking out at the sunset, ready to conquer the world, the tragedy is we know they don't. We know there can only be two. We know Plagueis is there. We know that these two are doomed in some way. So to me, it is a bittersweet tragedy, this foreboding ending, but that's because I know about the Sith lineage and all these other things, whereas I think I had a different subset of the audience that can be like, they're married, Headland said. Kevin, it's okay to end with the bad guy and make the bad guy look really cool.
I want to touch on, I've been putting up Justin Jones's comment about rooting for the bad guy, and he also said Kamir's double lightsaber throw followed up by the 3-point attack defending by Soul's force push was the best moment for me. And then he says, Justin, is this a 4-year-old Plagueis? Can't be any older than 12, right? And that's where I was, and that's a good point there, Justin, because this is where I was kind of having my problem, because I've been listening to the Darth Plagueis novel, which is just phenomenal, by the way, and to me, it's still canon. I don't care what this series says, but you got Darth Tenebrous, who's a Bith master, bringing up Plagueis here. And so this series takes place about 100 or so years before the Phantom Menace. Plagueis is about 100 years old during this time of the early prequel era. So I always thought this should have been Tenebrous, not Plagueis, but it seems to me that because Plagueis is considered canon because of episode 3, that they're kind of rewriting history here, Kyle, and using this character as the Darth Plagueis going forward. But it's another missed opportunity if they would have paid more attention to this canon, this now uncanon novel, unfortunately, because it was so rich and it was so well written as well. And I really feel like if you're going to bring in Darth Plagueis and hit the landing on this, there really should have been a moment between Plagueis and Kamir. Unless, no, I'm going to say that there should have been a moment, because I'm kind of getting the feeling that either Kamir doesn't know Plagueis is there and he's trying to get his own acolyte, or they're working together and Kamir's not telling Osha about Plagueis, because in the Darth Plagueis novel, Sidious is not telling Maul about Plagueis, but Plagueis knows about Maul. And Sidious is slowly training and putting the trials of the dark side for Maul and having him do these missions and assassinations. And there's a time that he got like injured because he was, and he was doing some bad stuff. And Sidious was like, basically kind of put him in a timeout. He put him on a planet and made him do some trials to make him learn stuff, So what my point is with this is I'm trying to figure out this scene, Kyle. If and when they do a second season, which we'll talk about in a moment, where is Darth Plagueis and Kamir at this moment? Does Kamir know about Darth Plagueis, or is Darth Plagueis going, who are these Darksiders and what can I do? So this is where I'm kind of going back for, what are they trying to retell the Disney version of Darth Plagueis?
So a couple of things. First and foremost, let me address the Leslye Headland side of this, because Kevin, I think what Leslye Headland done is 1,000 times worse than what Rian Johnson did.
Whoa!
Rian Johnson.
Whoa! You sure you want to say that, Kyle?
Yes, I'm gonna live by the saber. I'm gonna die by the saber.
Are you sure you don't want to save that for the Bomb It from Orbit segment?
Well, no, because there's a reason why I think it fits into this here, because I think it's important tying it into Plagueis. Yes, Ryan Johnson told a different side of the Force and did some things with some characters. And whether I agree with those decisions or not, he stayed true to he kept those characters, some basics of those characters. And he took some of them sideways, yes, but he kept some basics of those characters. Leslye Headland is taking a character and saying, screw it, I'm writing this character from my own headcanon.
Okay. I see where you're going.
Instead of taking from stuff that already pre-existed, that knowing the fans love this story of Plagueis, a lot of fans did, and implementing some of that. Oh no, out with the battle. I'm writing Plagueis the way I want to write Plagueis, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going with this. Yep. I agree with you.
So I've talked about this before, Kevin. I think one of the biggest problems in Disney Star Wars right now is that every creator feels like I have to put my own stamp on Star Wars. I have to make my own standout thing in Star Wars and leave my indelible mark on it. This is hubris. This is ego. This is I am doing this my way. Everybody else be damned.
So what makes me sad about this, and you're right, Kyle, what makes me sad about this is that the Darth Plagueis novel, he's a fascinating and well-rounded character. He has there's things about him that remind me of the Imperial that dresses in white with the blue skin.
Oh, Thrawn.
There's things about him that remind me of Thrawn because he's very cultured, and he goes by Hugo Damas, in where he hides in plain sight as this rich banker clan guy that has holdings, and he controls and pulls the strings of all of these puppets that he's controlling. And he's a very formidable person as this Hugo Damas guy that everyone knows him by. And you really kind of like what he's doing and what he's doing. And in that novel, too, they really explain why they're doing what they're doing. And they're trying to basically undermine the Jedi and finding ways to do this from day one of this. And it's a little bit kind of touching on what Kamir was saying, but on a much more galactic scale. And you really find the character of Plagueis fascinating, and how he is teaching and mentoring young Palpatine as Sidious, and how they're working together, and how he's smart enough to let Palpatine be the face of now the New Republic. Because what you find out was that before Sidious poisons and kills Darth Plagueis, when Sidious Palpatine is made Chancellor, Plagueis was supposed to be made co-chancellor, but as Hugo Damas, so they can help rule this new era together, in addition to getting the clone army going and manipulating, the cloners and Darth Tyrannus and all that kind of stuff. And you're really you're seeing this partnership of these Sith masters working one-on-one together. And it's such a really well done story, especially when they interweave these time frames in the prequel trilogy. So if the prequel trilogy really isn't your thing, this book makes it so much more watchable, because as you rewatch the prequel series, you remember this book, and you're like, oh, this is what Darth Tenebrous did before this. This is now what Plagueis is doing. My point is, Kyle, here is that you're right. You're getting these writers wanting to kind of tell their own version of Star Wars when you already had this wonderful Legends era thing that you could have pulled from, and either, kind of use that as a guideline. And it just, in a way, it's just kind of crapping on the work of the stuff that's been done.
Wow.
And this is the type of work, Kyle, that makes me say, with this series and from The Last Jedi on, this is not my head canon. I don't care if it's Disney canon. In my canon, it's not head canon.
Well, and that goes into an interesting thing, Justin. Jones put up, Ryan Johnson had the worst moment, Fluke Skywalker trying to murder a child in his sleep. But the Acolyte just destroyed lore.
Yeah.
And I think there's a point to that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, well said.
Here's the crazy thing of all of this, Kevin, is that we have Darth Plagueis, who is a character we've never seen on screen before. But yet there is a novel that was so well done that so many Star Wars fans have a recognition of. And even though we only see Plagueis in this short little shot, like creeping around the corner, but just how it's portrayed and how we're feeling about this show, we're so into this whole thing. And hello to our good friend Din out there.
What's up, Din? F105 in the house.
And so it feels like, again, it's just there's a baseline, like you said, Kevin. Even if you don't have to follow it word for word, you have a baseline there that fans seem to like and are established. At least work with that baseline.
That's a good point. And I want to kind of make the comparison here. When it comes to the Darth Plagueis novel, it is done so well. And it's kind of like, you fans, you've seen it before, where you see a movie that comes from a book and the book is so damn good, but the movie really doesn't do it justice. There's been exceptions of that. There has been some, but this is kind of where I'm feeling that they're trying to do with Plagueis here, is that hiding him in a cave here, not giving him a moment before this series ends, and trying to tell us that you're going to retell your own version of Plagueis. To me, I'm just not buying it right now, and I'm not accepting it. Because that Darth Plagueis novel, to me, and like I said, guys, I'm going to say it one more time. If you have not read or listened to that novel, please do. It is phenomenal. It is one of my favorites, and it really makes watching the and I'm a fan of the prequel series, but it makes me enjoy that prequel series more knowing what's going on. And if you've read it and you liked it, you know what I'm talking about.
The other thing, just real quick too, Kevin, on it is, I think Plagueis knows about Osha. Kamir is looking for his own acolyte to take out Plagueis, because that's just how it kind of seems to work with the Sith. But because of what
is that what you think is happening here? That he doesn't know Plagueis is there?
Well, I think he knows Plagueis is there. I just think Plagueis is probably his master, but he's looking for his own acolyte to take out his master. Just that always seems to be the path of the Sith. The apprentice finds his own apprentice so he can take out his master to become the new master. That always seems to be how it seems to have worked with the Sith for the most part. But in this case, because of what Osha is and what May is, and that's kind of the elephant in the room, because yes, they're split. What happens if somehow things happen and they join up? I mean, what happens if they are brought together? Do they become this uber powerful being? What's going on? You can't tell me Plagueis doesn't know about that and could be setting up Kamir in his own right to just deliver him Osha.
That's a good point. I did want to mention what Guy said here in the chat here. He says, I've given up. I can't tell anymore what or isn't canon, even who's in charge of canon. Remember when Pablo Hidalgo was like the go-to canon guy back in the day? I don't know who is now, and I have a question about that. Din says, I agree. That's my favorite Star Wars book. I just hope they stay true to the book. I mean, we don't know how he found the power. So if the show shows that, it doesn't conflict with the book, right? That's a good question. I have questions, Din, about the timeline, though. That's where I'm kind of confused with. But you can mess with the timeline a little bit, and still, if you are going to pay tribute to that Darth Plagueis book, Din, there is still a chance to do that and kind of save this appearance that we barely get of Plagueis. That does need to be explained. So I hope so, if that's the case. And I did want to mention something, and I said earlier in the podcast here, is that it's okay not to like all Star Wars. We can like what we like. But I did want to say this: when new Star Wars comes out, I always watch it at least once because I want to know what's going on. Same thing with Star Trek. I don't like all new Star Trek. I don't have to like all new Star Wars, but I am going to enjoy what I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah. I think too, the other thing is, Kevin, and I want to go back to this point real quick before we move on to our final topic for this, is that she says in this thing she felt odd having it be where if is Plagueis shows up, it overshadows Osha's journey? I don't think so. I think it enforces Osha's journey. If Plagueis is the last thing we see in this episode, I'm much more intrigued than seeing Yoda at the end of this episode. I'm much more intrigued by seeing a really good shot of Plagueis at the end of the episode than just this him cowering, hiding in the shadows in a cave. I think also considering the Acolyte was supposed to be a show from the Sith perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm just,
Yep.
I'm just
Din says, by the way, he's bringing the audiobook on tour. For those of you that don't know, Din is promoting his new album that's coming out. He's going to be doing a little West Coast tour. We're going to hang out. We're going to see him at Scum and Villainy. He's going to come up into my neck of the woods. Really excited about that. Make sure you check out F105. Check out his album. I'm excited to see you, brother.
Yep. Absolutely. Good work, Din. It's always great to have you on the chat, too. So please join in whenever you can. But our last topic, because, that's the thing with these shows on Disney Plus now. We don't know if they're series or if it's just a season and they're moving on. We never knew that with the Acolyte. Nothing has yet been confirmed with the Acolyte. But Kevin, the way they ended this sure made me feel like, yeah, they're trying to angle for a season 2 at least. And I know Leslye Headland has said that she has plans for a season 2. The question is, Kevin, should we get a season 2? And you and I found a very interesting article and podcast that talks about Star Wars and success rates of Star Wars and things right there. Jimmy Doyle was a guest on the Town podcast with Matthew Bellamy on the Ringer Network. And they had a very interesting conversation about Star Wars success. There's also, you can find this on illuminatedata.com, this article by Jimmy Boyle as well, where he talks about episode trends and how for the Acolyte, it's just been a slow decline in episode trends. There was an uptick with episode 6, but then it dropped down again. And it's the lowest trending show of Star Wars. And we have these charts up here. He shows Ahsoka on the article. He talks about Ahsoka's trends, and you can see where Ahsoka's stayed up pretty consistently throughout and actually jumped in the episode that Hayden Christensen guest starred in. And then you look at like where Obi-Wan and the Mandalorian came in, the blue line representing the Mandalorian, where it stayed pretty steady until season 3, where at Obi-Wan, the first episode hit and it just dropped like a rock.
Yeah, Obi-Wan had that huge push at Star Wars Celebration, and so a lot of people were excited about the concept of it. And what was interesting about that podcast that you brought up was that even the strength of knowing that Darth Vader was making an appearance and that Anakin and Obi-Wan were going to have that first clash didn't help the ratings for the Obi-Wan show. That it had its strongest height, I guess, in the first couple episodes when it was premiered.
Well, and here's a great thing that chart he had. Compare total minutes watched for the first 12 weeks of recent Star Wars shows. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this up on our screen. Mandalorian by far leads the way, followed by surprisingly
that was season 3, by the way. That's that pink bar that's going across there. It is in the lead.
Yeah. Then Book of Boba Fett.
Yep, that's the blue bar there. It's close behind Mandalorian season 3.
Then Kenobi.
Yep, that's the green one.
Then Andor.
Right.
Then Ahsoka. And while Acolyte hasn't been out 12 weeks, it's got a long way to go if it even's going to try to catch Ahsoka. It's really down there, Kevin.
Yeah. That podcast was fascinating because they talked about the trends regarding Disney era and how it's kind of just resolved to become Star Wars has become a TV series, and that we're not going to get the next Star Wars movie until 2026, which is the Mando and Grogu movie. And the last movie that we had was 2019, when Star Wars is mostly known as a movie franchise. And also, too, one of the more fascinating things about this podcast, and the article touches on this as well, is would Star Wars benefit if they were to lend their shows to other streamers? Because if you remember, Kyle, remember when the Clone Wars dropped on Netflix, and not only was it discovered by a lot of people, and the ratings for that were huge, or at least the attention of it was huge, and then people were rediscovering it and fell in love with the Clone Wars, and that kind of helped extend that series and that fandom a lot more, and went on to other things like the Bad Batch and, of course, Ahsoka's stardom as well. But they were talking about how, like, everyone knows that if you're going to see new Star Wars, you got to go to Disney Plus. Well, what if these ratings were helped by sharing their Star Wars stories on other streamers, which is why you have Disney and HBO Max kind of working together now, trying to do some crossovers here instead of just having it always be on Disney Plus, because there's a lot of people that don't want to get Disney Plus because they have all these other streamers, and so that was a really interesting conversation about this, and how, in the world of trying to figure out how many people are actually watching this show, compared to the old Nielsen ratings that we have, is another story in itself.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Guy talks about this. They can always drop it on Hulu or ABC for some extra views. And if I remember I remember correctly, they did that with at least the first 3 episodes of Andor.
Yeah, but you gotta make this a thing. You gotta make it keep happening. You got to be consistent about this, and give Disney Plus, the first run. That's fine. But then drop it on Hulu or drop it on ABC with the commercials and stuff like that, so that people can watch this stuff if they don't have Disney Plus. The point is getting people excited about it. Whether you yourself don't like the Acolyte, try to get other people into it and better exposure. But I don't know if Disney is doing themselves a favor the way this is being brought to us right now. And also of us having to wait for so long for a movie, because they go into how the sequel movies really didn't leave a lot for where else to go for future films, especially with the division among fans and the direction that they took with the sequel trilogy. It was a really well done podcast. Thank you for bringing it. Make sure you check out The Town, and please check out this article because it is fascinating. It does back this stuff up quite well.
Guy actually brings up another good point. Some say Disney never should have gotten into the streaming business, but only licensed out content like you were describing. So, real quick, I'm going to touch on this because here's what's going on. Streaming kind of became the thing, and then COVID hit. And then everybody went on streaming because they wanted to control their own material. Well, now the correction is going into place because COVID changed so much in how things were going. You're seeing streamers starting to merge together already, and like Warner Brothers is selling a lot of their streaming rights to things to Netflix right now. A lot of HBO shows and stuff can be found on Netflix or are coming to Netflix sooner than later. I think Disney should be considering this option with at least like the Star Wars stuff and the Marvel stuff. It's finding it work with another distributor. I know they've talked about working with HBO Max. That Warner Brothers disaster is a whole other thing. And I don't know if I would want to be touching anything Warner Brothers right now with a 10-foot pole, but that's a whole other podcast. But the other question aspect of it is, Kevin, do we want to see season 2 of The Acolyte? Do we want to see these creative minds come back and give us another season of this show? Now, I'm going to be honest. I would actually be intrigued to see somebody else take over the reins and tell us more about Kamir and Osha and May and that aspect of it, and follow up with some of the plot threads. Somebody who knows how to write a proper story and tell a proper plot. I give another writer a chance here, because for me, that's the problem with The Acolyte. This show, again, was all over the map and couldn't get out of its own way. Let another showrunner take over this show and work with, even if you want to keep Leslye Headland involved, have them work with Leslye Headland to try to, like Jon Favreau helped Dave Filoni, do something like that. And maybe I would be at least interested in a season 2, especially if they're going to do more with Plagueis and see what they give them a chance to do that. But right now, I can honestly say I could care less if I see a season 2 if you're just bringing me more of the same.
I'll comment on that. Justin says, I saw some math on this topic, and Disney has lost like $10 billion by splitting off instead of having a contract with Netflix. I don't know if you guys know this, but Netflix has a lot of money, and they pay a lot of money to carry other people's work on their streamers. Yeah, that's a good point there, because so many people already had Netflix, and and that's what brings it up to my point regarding how popular the Clone Wars was and how people fell in love with it, because it dropped on Netflix, and people found it there. Kyle, I'm not excited for season 2. If it happens, I'm going to watch it, of course, and give it a shot and hope that maybe it makes the turn and gets better. Because, first seasons of shows and have done better on the second and third and so on and so forth. We can, go down the history of that. But yeah, I would like to see a little switch up there. I don't know if I have faith in Leslye as a showrunner, to be perfectly honest with you. I would rather have someone else kind of, retell the story later on in another series, to be perfectly honest with you. But, if it happens, I'll watch it at least once. But at this point right now, I don't know if I want to do a live reaction podcast about it, to be honest with you. I have to get excited. I have to see, who's cast, teasers, stuff like that. But this series has left me not excited about anything Acolyte season 2 coming up.
Okay, so one last question before we move on from this. Because I'm curious about this, because I know how I'm kind of feeling right now. Has this Acolyte experience got you less excited for the next Star Wars project, which we know at this point is Skeleton Crew?
No, actually, I'm more excited about the Skeleton. Was it called the what?
Skeleton Crew.
I'm more excited about the Skeleton Crew because I want to kind of move on from the Acolyte.
I'm of a mixed bag because I've heard some stories about Skeleton Crew, but I want to see what's going to happen. Plus,
I'm still trying to figure out what your stories are, dude. You keep alluding to that, and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just that it was not a good set. It was a very problematic set.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad though, because we've had how many times we podcasted about movies and TV series, Kyle, where it was crap on the set, people hated each other, but the movie and the product was good.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that is it is in more in the time frame.
Are you setting yourself up to not like it because you've?
No, I'm just not going in. I'm not going in with any expectations on Skeleton.
Okay, all right, you're going in with low expectations. Actually,
let me put it this way: the only Star Wars project that I have any expectations of hopes on at this point right now is Andor season 2.
I'm with you there. I'm really excited about that. I did want to just real quick read the last thing that the Illuminate data.com, which was in the podcast about the trend that Disney's been doing here. They say The Mandalorian remains the standard of success for Star Wars on Disney Plus. Season 3, episode 1 had 5.5 million views on the first 2 days, and the finale only dropped to 5.39 million views, just a 6% decrease. While it never reached the single episode heights of Obi-Wan's premiere, the data indicates fans finished the season and would come back for more. Disney is banking on just that, as they will soon ask fans to buy a ticket for The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters summer 2026. It's still unclear if another Star Wars series can capture the dedicated and broad audience of The Mandalorian. Despite the data, we might be wise to remember the words of Han Solo, "Never tell me the odds."
Yeah. Okay, then. With that, we are going to wrap up our coverage of the Acolyte. How would you react if Disney Lucasfilm said we are going to decanonize the Acolyte and move up to other stories?
Hold on, Kyle. Wait, hold on. You broke up a little bit there. A guy says, how would you react if Disney Lucasfilm said we are going to decanonize the Acolyte and move on to other stories? They would never do that, Guy, unfortunately. As fans who aren't happy with the series would probably like that. But no one would come out and say that or even admit that, especially in this era.
Yeah, I agree. So, but it is time to wrap up our coverage on the Acolyte. I think we've said all we can say here, and we'll just see how the fallout comes from this. So
I just wish that I walked away from the series with a better feeling than I do now. I'll be honest with you. There were some ideas, and they just it fell flat for me.
One last thing, real quick, because I brought this up to you off mic the other day, and I'd be curious what you in the chat and some other people, if you're listening to this, put it in maybe your comments on our Facebook page or something like that. What if they were to have taken a really good editor, cut down the Acolyte to maybe about a 2-hour and 20-minute movie? And it was I
don't see how seeing less of these characters would make him more likable. I just don't. I actually think it would have made it worse, Kyle. I'm answering your question. I don't think it would have helped.
Sorry. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because the problem we've had is we've wanted longer episodes to flush out these characters and make them more interesting and likable. So cutting it down even more doesn't help.
So on the flip side of that, I also have one other theory, Kevin. With the length of time of these episodes, what if I told you I think The Acolyte was originally written as a movie, and then they decided to expand it out into a series, and they were like scrambling to add stuff to it?
We would have heard news about that, and that's just, that's timey-wimey stuff. That was never the case. It was
wait.
It was made to be a series.
Our good buddy Ghostbusters, he's nailed it, Kevin. I want the Basil spinoff.
There's another character I found annoying. I'm sorry.
Okay, guys, it really is time to move on. This is the Fandom Podcast Network, and guess what, guys? We do have some other things to talk about. So, ladies and gentlemen,
Let's use.
Okay, it's funny because we've been spending all this time talking about a Disney product. Yeah, Bezo and Pip were the stars. I'll give you that on Pip.
I'll take a Pip spinoff any day. There we go.
But we can't escape Disney properties because these guys might be just on their way back to save the MCU if Deadpool can't do it. But I'm pretty sure Deadpool can do it. But that's a whole. Before
I comment on this, can I just mention, guys, comment in the chat here. Rodents in space, like the old pigs in space. I love that.
Yes, absolutely. But these two, and if you are not familiar with this image, if you don't recognize these two people, or you're listening to the audio version of this show, we are talking about the Russo brothers, the men behind the Avengers films, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War,
Captain America, Winter Soldier,
a lot of things that people consider the best of the MCU. These guys are back in conference with Marvel Studios to come back and take over the controls on the next two Avengers films. Kevin, I know some people are like, okay, it's time for the Russos to move on to other things, but these guys know this product better than just about anybody, except maybe Kevin Feige. But they worked great with Kevin Feige. They made an amazing two Avengers films and the Winter Soldier. I'm all for bringing the Russos back into the MCU family.
Well, that depends. Is Iron Man coming back? Is Captain America coming back? I mean, they can direct all they want, but we have to really see the resurgence of MCU coming back because it's been a little lackluster in this recent phase. That's why we're really excited for Deadpool Wolverine, because this looks like a lot of fun, and we're getting characters that we've wanted into the MCU for a while. But another reason why those films worked is because of the star powers they had, which we don't have anymore.
Which is true, but I still think these guys could help right the ship and maybe get some new star power back to it.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, but guys, not a lot of news. Next week could be a lot of news. Comic-Con is coming right around the corner. We could have a lot of interesting things to talk about after that. But you know what, too? We have seen a few things around here. So, as always, it's time to buy it, stream it, or unsee it. Okay, Kevin, I haven't had a lot of time to see things, but I know you've seen a couple of things, and
I've been hearing a lot of that from you, Kyle. You need to step up your game. It's summertime. Come on.
Yeah, I'm
see some movies, brother.
I'm going to the movies tomorrow because I'm down around Twisters. So I would have gone today if I had the time, but I'm here podcasting because I love our fans. But Kevin, you have seen some things. We will get a little spoilery in the things that we are going to talk about. But first up for you, Kevin, let's talk about Letterboxd, our great friends at Letterboxd, who you keep quite busy.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've been keeping track of all the films I've been watching all year. Every time I watch a movie, I go into Letterboxd and give it a quick little 1 to 5 star review. And since January 1st of 2024, I've been keeping track, and I am up to 240 films as of July 19th, 2024.
Yeah, I'm way behind.
What are you at? Yeah, are you keeping track of your movies? What are you at? Like
I maybe like 10.
Have you actually been keeping track of them?
I've missed a few, but I'm probably at best at about 35 films for the year.
Oh God, Kyle, I need a new co-host of the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm just gonna say, this guy's not keeping his end up. Come on.
Well, oh yeah, you've been keeping it all up for. Yeah, Kevin, you are the Viagra of movie watching.
I don't know what to say to that, but okay.
It's getting late. I have been dealing with Microsoft all day. It's amazing the podcast is still on the air, but hey.
I think Din is impressed. He like he goes, wow.
So the first thing you've seen, Kevin, is a movie I'm actually intrigued by because I love the space program and everything to do with that. Plus, it's Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum. Tatum. Fly Me to the Moon.
Yeah, so
among the stars.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, fly me to the moon. Let me lay among the stars.
There you go.
You've never heard this song?
Do you know the rest?
No, I don't want to invoke copyright here. So
I did want to preface that this was part of a double feature, a 2-movie marathon back to back that I did on Tuesday, which is Cheap Tuesdays. Prices for tickets are cheaper on Tuesdays across the states here. And this was kind of my palate cleanser for the previous film that I'll talk about next. But I was kind of curious about this because Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum star in this film that takes place around the launch of the mission to the moon to try to be the first people to land on the moon. What's interesting about this film is that there's been these conspiracy theories for years and years that we faked the moon landing. Okay. And what's interesting about this is that Scarlett Johansson basically plays a popular advertising executive and is very good at what she does, and basically making things popular, whether it's commercials. Kind of think of Mad Men, but more of a fun version, And Channing Tatum plays a former a veteran and a pilot, and is heading up the space program here. And his character is based on someone in real life. Now, this story itself is not based on a true story, but it is based on events around true stories, if you think of it that way. And what's happening is that people aren't interested in NASA and don't have the excitement for it. So her job is to get people excited about it, to do some promotions about it and stuff like that. But then you get this character played by Woody Harrelson who says, look, we need to make sure this mission happens, whether it really happens or not. So secretly, he asks Johansson and Tatum reluctantly, I need you to film a fake moon landing in case these guys don't pull it off. And so you get to see both sides of it really happening, and what we saw as, people older than us remember seeing it happen live, to them trying to also say, this is our backup plan in case it doesn't happen. And there's a very funny cat in this movie, this black cat that kind of is seen a lot and has some funny moments in it. It's an okay film. I wouldn't say it's a buy it, go out and see it, Kyle, but it is funny. It is entertaining. There is a little chemistry between these two. Woody Harrelson's great in this, but I got to give it to Scarlett Johansson. She was very charming, entertaining. She was beautiful in this. And I would say it's worth a streamer, not a buy it.
Okay, so Kevin, I'm going to say this. You talk about a cat in this film. There was a cat in the Quiet Place film.
Yeah.
There was a Garfield movie out, and there was a cat in Argyle. Is this the year of the cat in movies?
You know what? That's a good point. Yes, this could be the year for cats. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Now, you went from something lighthearted to Longlegs, Kevin. And this movie's getting a lot of internet buzz right now. Nick Cage's newest film.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge horror guy. My wife is, right? Erin is, and she's going to see this film, but she's in Australia right now, so she has to wait a week. So I got to see it before she did. And I really hadn't heard anything about it until recently. And the reason why I wanted to see this film is for a few reasons. First of all, I found out that Nicolas Cage is in this film. but this movie's not being promoted as a Nicolas Cage film. And I'm like, whoa, why? And also that this movie was being compared to if you're a fan of Seven, if you're a fan of X-Files, if you're a fan of serial killers leaving clues, and because if you look on the history of serial killers, Kyle, there has been some serial killers that have left clues on purpose, like the Zodiac Killer and stuff like that. And that got me interested in wanting to see this, because as you could put this into a horror category, it's more of kind of like a crime thriller with a little horror thrown in there. And so I was really curious. And this movie takes place in the 90s, which I also thought was fascinating as well. And I saw this first, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to go see this kind of like, comedy romantic movie afterwards to kind of cleanse the palate a little bit. But I got to tell you, Kyle, I like this movie better.
Okay, but there is another aspect of this movie we need to talk about, Kevin. And that
I'm getting into that.
Okay, I'm going to let you take over.
No. What you wanted to bring up a point, so go.
I wanted to bring up the point of who the writer and director of this film was, because he has a lineage of these kind of films in his family.
Oz Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins. You guys remember who that guy is?
Sort of shower scene, just saying.
Yeah. The psycho guy. Yeah, Oz Perkins is known for movies. Well, what's funny is he's been an actor in films. He was in Legally Blonde, Secretary, and stuff like that. But he's also a director as well. And he's done some stuff. He did, what was it here? Let me pull up the director stuff here. He's done Twilight Zone series recently, Gretel and Hansel, the Black Coat's Daughter, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. So he kind of has, when it comes to directing, he has kind of an era. And he's gone from actor to director basically here. But when it comes to this movie, Kyle, and I just want to give you guys, I'm not going to spoil anything here because I want you guys to see it for yourself here, but it's in the pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent played by Micah Monroe uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. Well, Blair Underwood is in this as well. He's one of the co-stars. Alicia Witt. Do you know who Alicia Witt is, Kyle?
But yes, I am very familiar with Miss Alicia Witt. Thank you very much.
A role I've never expected her to be in. And I got to tell you, Kyle, this movie was fascinating. It was intense. It was a little scary at times. But what really is cool about this film is the director's style. He doesn't close up on characters when they're talking. He brings the lens back, because when you see horror type films do that, Kyle, you know something's going to happen behind them, right? You're waiting for the jump scare. You're waiting for the creepy thing to go behind them. And what's fascinating about this film is there's moments where he does that, to when throughout the rest of the film, when he's doing these wide shots of people talking and this really intense, scary music is playing in the back, you're on the edge of your seat going, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen now? And this movie takes a turn. And let me just tell you right now, Nicolas Cage is the character in question, but how things are done is fascinating. And we always go, have you ever seen this new Nicolas Cage character he plays? Dude, I can't spoil it. I just can't. But I would give him some type of acting nod on this when it comes to an award. He is so freaking like scary and intense in this film. But it doesn't go the way you think. And how he pulls off these crimes is fascinating. And seeing the clues that this female FBI person is doing is fascinating. And it's definitely a buy it for me. It was worth seeing on the big screen. And I was pleasantly surprised by this film. Normally it's not my type of film, but I love movies like Seven where you get the clues. I love the tense, and when you're trying to put all the clues and you're watching the investigation part of it. I love those.
Yeah, no, those are. I'm with you that when you have that investigation angle of it, that's when it gets really interesting for me. Yeah. So, there's that. Now, Kevin, you say I haven't seen anything. I didn't put it in the notes because I didn't know if I was going to get to finish it before we recorded tonight. But I did just finish season 4 of The Boys. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but The Boys are back. The craziness ensues. I've had a lot of people ask me, do you need to have watched Gen V, which was the spin-off series that had its first season between The Boys, season 3 and season 4? I don't think you need to 100% watch it, but I think it helps because there's some characters in it in this upcoming season that have some tie-ins to Gen V and will answer some questions that you might not be 100% sure about. It is an epic performance by Carl Urban this season. And young Mr. Quaid as Huey, Jack Quaid. This guy's a superstar. I'm sorry. Between what he's done with Lower Decks, what he is doing in this season of The Boys, I need more Jack Quaid in my life. I need him.
That's good. That's good to hear. I was intentionally waiting for the series to end so I can marathon it later. Overall, is it good? Do you recommend it? It's been renewed for another season, right?
Yeah, it's fifth and final season is coming, and the only thing I will say is this: is you close out the final episode of this season of The Boys. The 5th season of The Boys might end up being the most off the rail season of television in a good way that we have ever seen, because it's going to be bloody, it's going to be crazy, and if you thought what stuff The Boys have done to this point was over the top, I have a feeling the final season, after what you watch in season 4 and how it sets up, is that it's going to be absolutely insane. To address your concerns, Guy, I actually thought season 3 was much more sexualized than season 4.
Well, Guy says the critique I've heard is this season is that it's over sexualized. It's interesting from what I've seen from The Boys from the first 3 seasons, Kyle. It's all been sexual. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's part of the show. It's been a very shocking show because of how graphic they get on everything. But it's one of the reasons why people find it fascinating, because you're wondering how much further are they planning on going? So yeah. Go ahead.
There's one final thing I'll just say about this season of The Boys. It's definitely a stream it. I'd buy it if I could. But Kevin, there's just one thing I want to tell you about it, and I'm just gonna say it. I don't think it's spoiling anything until you actually get it. You understand the context within the season. Zendaya. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll let you wonder if you've watched
Zendaya.
Zendaya,
the Spider-Man girl, the Dune girl.
Yeah. Okay. Zendaya. You will understand once you watch the season.
Okay. I did want to mention. I did a full rewatch of The Big Bang Theory recently, and we recently had what's his name pass away.
Bob Newhart.
Bob Newhart passed away. And I really loved him on the later seasons of that series. He was Professor Proton, and then his character passes away in the TV series, but then comes back as an Obi-Wan ghost figure when Sheldon needs to kind of think about things in his life. And Bob Newhart was really good in that series. And it got me thinking, like, okay, what am I going to marathon next? Or I marathon something new? The first few episodes of the House of Dragons, Kyle, I've been a little what's the word I'm looking for here?
Underwhelmed?
Yeah, underwhelmed. I've been underwhelmed by it. I've stopped watching the new episodes. I'm like, well, I'm just going to wait till they're done and maybe I'll marathon them that way. But it got me wanting to watch Game of Thrones again. And my dad started watching it, and he's already on season 3. I started watching Game of Thrones again. I'm on season 2 right now, and I'm fully enjoying it. There's things that I am not getting from the Dragon series right now that I really enjoy about Game of Thrones, and I'll get into that another time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I can understand where you're coming from on that. But guys, that is going to wrap up this week's episode.
Thanks for everyone in the chat. Den,
yes, Guy,
Chris,
Justin.
Guy, appreciate you guys. Yeah.
This has been Culture Clash. We are finalizing our coverage of the Acolyte. We have some fun things coming up that we're going to get to, including getting back to our year of time travel. We're going to save a few movies from Oblivion. We've got some fun things planned. So we will be off next week, but we will be back with a lot of fun things, and there's going to be a lot of things to talk about because I think the second half of this year, you're going to see a return to the movies. You're going to see some things that we have forgotten about because of the writer strike that are coming back. And I can't wait to start digging into some of that stuff.
Back to the other topics that you just kind of mentioned briefly, Kyle. We are going to be returning. We are returning to some time travel movies that we're going to highlight on Culture Clash. But we're also going to be going into Save from Oblivion. There's a couple of movies that we looked at. We're like, why aren't people talking about this anymore? I'm not going to tease those just yet, but we got a couple fun ones we're going to do, as well as, of course, going back into the time travel movies that we enjoy. So some I still haven't seen too, which I'm excited to watching for the first time. And yes, see you soon, Din. Thanks for the great show. Appreciate you checking in, man. I can't wait to see you in Hollywood and hang out with you, brother.
Have a good time together, guys. This is the Fandom Podcast Network, Culture Clash. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on all your major podcast catchers, including iTunes, Spotify, of course, at our home at fpnet.podbean.com. You can visit our Facebook group there. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at FanPod Network. I am Kyle. You can find me on our Facebook groups all over the place. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Threads and Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on all of those platforms pretty much at Spartan_Phoenix.
Again, guys, just a quick reminder, if you want even more Acolyte coverage, check out What a Piece of Junk on the Fandom Podcast Network, our exclusive Star Wars show. Those guys are going in-depth on the Acolyte, and next week their episode covering the finale of the Acolyte will be out. And finally, again, thank you so much for joining on the show. As always, as we like to close out here, remember, respect each other and enjoy your fandom. And with that, guys, we have done this thing, and we are out of here.